You are listening to Girls, Ghosts, Ghouls, a podcast where three women discuss horror movies from the silent era through the 1970s. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Spotify, and Anchor. Timely, topical, terrifying. Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to our newest episode of Girls, Ghosts, Ghouls. We really loved doing Rosemary's Baby. But it left us wanting more William Castle because we all really love William Castle. So we were throwing around which ones to do. And I was like, we could do a double feature, the original 13 Ghosts and the current 13 Ghosts. And Rebecca's like, or Tingler. And I'm like, okay, these are all great ideas. And then we weren't making up our minds, other than Rebecca was more on the, I don't really want to do a double feature because they run kind of long. And I was like, okay, well, Tingler, and then I just threw up a list of William Castle movies. And Rebecca's like, kind of interested in the Joan Crawford as an axe murderer one. I'm like, shit, I've never seen that one. Let's do it. So that's why
the cover caught my attention because she's there with an axe, and I'm like, oh, what's this?
So that movie is Strait Jacket. It's 1963 is when it came out, and it, as noted, starred Joan Crawford. And here's our little storyline. Lucy Harbin has been in an asylum for 20 years after axing her husband and his mistress during a crime of passion witnessed by her young daughter, Carol. While trying to renew ties with Carol, who is now a young woman about to be married, heads begin to roll again. Is Lucy repeating her past? And there you have your plot summary right there. And so here's the thing, guys, just to warn you, if you're expecting classic William Castle, aka 13 Ghosts, Tingler, The House on Haunted Hill, this is not that movie. But the first 3 minutes of the movie will make you think it is. Yeah. Because you got your classic castle opening with crazy laughing voices and the lovely dialogue. Betsy, you want to hit us with the opening dialogue there?
Oh my God. All right. Hold on.
This line struck me so funny that as soon as I heard it, I threw it in the group chat to the ladies. I'm like, hey.
Marvin was very much a woman and very much aware of that fact.
That sounds so noir that you expect.
It totally did. Only the person speaking was a woman, and it was actually her daughter talking about the past. And I thought it was so hilarious because one, that it was such a film noir thing to say, and two, that it was from the that it was a woman saying it, because we would never.
No, that's not something we say. That's
just very much a woman. And
I think I'm going to start introducing myself.
I mean, now I am.
I'm very much a woman, and I am very much aware of the fact.
That is one of those cases where it's like you can tell it was a man writing for a woman.
Absolutely.
Her breasts breasted boobily down the hallway. That's really kind of the equivalent of this one is.
She was breastily aware of her breasts bouncing breastily down.
You with that line, you expected it more to come out of the private eye and the loan office at night and the mysterious woman
with a cigarette with the glass of whiskey.
Since this whole thing happens her coming off of a train, which is also very noir. So she's stepping off of the train, and she lights the cigarette, and she's very much a woman and very much aware of the fact.
So you have that deceives you into thinking that you have a Tingler-esque type castle film and not a Rosemary's Baby. And the only other thing that also keeps it in the not Rosemary's Baby level of castle is the horrible, horrible effects. When she chops off people's heads, it's so clearly a mannequin that I don't know if you really hear the plastic pop sound of the mannequin head coming off, or if you just insert that in your brain because it's so obviously a mannequin head. It's so funny. It's like
they didn't spend a lot of money on special effects on this one. I don't think.
No. And I think that was, I don't want to say downfall, because it was a successful movie and it is an excellent movie, but it's not what it could be because of that intro and because of that really bad effects.
Right.
They almost would have been better just to cut away once the axe raised and just had a bunking sound.
The opening, when she kills her husband, they do it very much in shadow. So you see a plorp, but you don't hear it, you don't see it really. It's all in shadow. So
you see when she hits the heads. briefly, and you can see the plastic heads again there.
But it's
It's
just
quick, but it's there.
But I didn't feel it her half as much as I did later when she killed people. And
It was much worse later. Agreed.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, yes. To your point, they put much more effort in it, making it be more shadow and effect at those beginning actions than they did in the later ones, but you could still see plastic mannequin heads at the beginning too.
still,
Now, keep in mind, I've watched it 3 times now, so maybe in the first viewing, it didn't strike me as hard in that opening scene, but the second and third ones was freaking obvious. The one time I watched it, I swore the little girl mouth when she was watching her, but I don't think that actually happened. I think it was just looks of shock and horror when she was going, but it looked like, what the fuck?
I mean,
Much
she
to
might have
me,
said what
y'all
the
watch
fuck.
it, let me know. But yeah, so okay, opening scene. Not that we got to be seen, but like just to set the story, because things that like just classic misogyny and just patriarchy hit me. They point out that her husband, her second husband, like the first time basically her parents arranged a marriage to an older man, her second husband she chose for herself, 7 years younger, they point out. Like, that's a big deal. Like, if it was a dude, they wouldn't even mention 7 years.
Yeah. In my opinion, the way they set her up was very typical of the times. Since she was not, Susie Homemaker, she was of questionable material.
Low education level, but still, I mean, like, they made this big deal about he was 7 years younger than her. And I'm like, I mean, in all honesty, this was 1963. Age differences, if it was a guy 7 years younger, it wouldn't even hit the radar.
No.
Like, you're thinking 10 years younger is like par for the course. 20 years younger, they probably wouldn't even blink an eye in 60s, But, because she was a woman and the guy was younger, they were like 7 years younger.
And the whole way she's characterized in the beginning really, to me, does smack of that, because they're putting her into the framework of the forbidden, the questionable, it's that not so subtle disapproval, because she is not the typical stay-at-home.
They set up as
She's
white
not
trash.
fitting.
So yeah, so like there's that. Her husband, played by Lee Majors, which is his film debut, and he is not credited for it, which I think is hilarious.
Yeah, look that one up.
That it's fun because not only do they set her up as this cheap white trash who's marrying this much younger man, they make it clear that the only reason he really married her is because she had property. Yeah. Nothing else. I mean, even though she was very much a woman, she just apparently was just too old to really appeal to somebody 7 years younger than her, and he'd only be interested in her for her property. And here's where he was skeezy as fuck. And I don't know, maybe it was just me, but the fact that he took the woman to his home, walked her by his daughter to bang this other woman I was like, that is so, I think he deserved to get axed.
Yeah, it's very skeevy and gross.
And didn't even check to see if she was actually asleep. He assumed she was asleep. But I'm sorry, if you're going to cheat on your wife, you probably should actually make sure your child is asleep.
Also, who gets mostly dressed afterwards? Because the scene where they're killed, he's got his like pants on and the belt buckled, and she's like still got her dress on. I'm like, did you guys actually do anything?
No, they just made out real heavy, and then she came home and was like, well, you're dead anyway.
Because like my experience, clothes go everywhere,
Although at one point he was definitely licking that woman's face, because I was like, he just licked her face and I am uncomfortable.
Oh, yuck.
Why they have intimacy coordinators now, for sure.
Right? Yeah, I was just thinking about that.
Freaking licked. Ugh.
No face licking.
Though I do kind of expect that maybe that had a little bit more to do with like censorship boards and stuff like that. I mean, I know like Psycho got away with some racy shit, but maybe they were like, yeah, if we have them like under the covers and seemingly naked, we're going to get in trouble. So we're just going to put them above the covers, fully clothed, the exception he had his shirt off. I think she was fully in her dress.
Yeah, it's typical for that time frame that you would have you would have had to moderate your film to make sure it did pass censors.
Yeah.
So yeah, they like Like today, we'd be like, they could have just been, you know, I mean, obviously, since like they set it up that clearly they weren't just friends crashing in a bed, but you know, like if I had walked in on that, like the people just sleeping in bed fully clothed, I don't even know that I would have been like,
I would have had to be like, what are you doing?
you know, I mean, but that's now. I guess if I was a 1963 housewife and walked in on, of course, actually that was supposed to be 20 years prior, so that would have been 1943, 1943 housewife, and I walked in with like that probably would be a whole different world where I'd be like, no, I know you all were sleeping together, and I'm about to kill you.
And
But
she did.
yes. But I do love the setup for it. Now, like what I thought was funny is she walked to the window first, which is interesting to me. Like, so she didn't like just go in the door. She slinkily walks up to the window to, I don't know, peek in on her husband and then peeks in and finds. But what's really just is you see the meltdown happen. Like Joan Crawford plays awesome meltdowns. Just amazing. You see her face deconstruct and break. And like, I don't know, when you watch, like the first time I watched it, I think she just went, I just saw her go straight for the axe. But when I watched it again, it was a lot more subtle than that. She didn't go for the axe. She was stumbling away, stumbled upon the axe.
Yeah,
and then was like,
in like the disbelief and shock, and then because you're like, when I found out my ex-husband was cheating, for example, I found out because I had journal entries that are written, and so I read it, and yeah, when you're confronted with your evidence, disbelief, shock, you don't know what to do, then the rage hits you. And you saw it on her face, much like when you said that white hot rage hit her, and she had, you know, and she had to do what she had to do.
so we have to break note of the charm bracelets. Now, this is interesting to me. Like, I swear in the opening scene, she had but one charm bracelet on. Not that this matters that much, but it's just an interesting thing where it develops later where there's two charm bracelets. But it looked like she had one on in the beginning. And like, it makes a very distinct, loud jingle noise, which comes into play later. But so as she's axing and you're hearing slight thunking noises, you're hearing the jingle jingle of this charm bracelet as well, which is
why I will not wear my charm bracelets when I murder people. It's a dead giveaway.
I mean, you know, would you ring a bell when you're doing it? No, but you know, but this is why it's a crime of passion and not premeditated, which is why she did not end up, you know, dead. So yeah, she's committed, clearly. And I love the fallout. Like they just kind of have her put in the straight jacket, which I have to admit I have been spelling wrong for ages.
Same.
I thought it was spelled like straight STRAIGHT. It is not. So make note of that if you're going to look up this movie, because it is streaming for free on several platforms right now, but you have to make sure you type in STRAIT, not AIGHT, to find it. So, just a note. But yeah, I loved how they did that. Like the straight jacket, it wasn't me, I didn't do it. And then now you're with the daughter.
Yeah, I felt like that was definitely in the beginning where you're like, okay, well, the horror is starting to come into play pretty early. Because as we all know, an asylum in the 60s, it's not where you want it to be, because
40s even.
What's that?
40s even.
Actually, like the 40s.
Oh, yeah. You're right. I'm sorry. I was.
No, so she was in the 60s too, but it started in the 40s.
Yeah, I was gonna say she started in the 40s.
I was forgetting to account for time. But yeah, I mean, it's the beginning when you can see her rage at the situation, and how, you know, and any of us are going to know she's being put in a position where they just want to silence her. None of them care. Yeah, at that point, there's going to be no staff in the asylum that cares about any rehabilitation or what have you. They want quiet. They want compliance. And to me, that's very horror-filled myself.
Agreed. But interestingly, the movie doesn't really go that way. I mean, they say that it was horrible and awful, but when you meet the doctor and the fact that they let her out, they clearly were working towards getting her better, but then keeping in mind the way they got people better at that time period in those 20 years is usually things like shock therapy and, you know, hydrotherapy, meaning they douse them in ice cold water and like terrible. So, you know, it's interesting because it's an interesting byplay where like she mentions it was like hell and horrible, But when you meet this doctor who comes along later, he does not strike you as the hell horrible type doctor, which doesn't mean that he wasn't, but it's interesting. And she talks about therapies like sculpting and knitting. And
Right.
oh, another thing I meant to ask you guys. So the opening, after they do the initial introduction of this is what happened with Lucy Harbin, and then they flash to the actual opening credits and they have all that artwork. Does that not look like it was supposed to be therapy art? Like she was painting out her horse. And then I was trying to figure out if that was supposed to be her artwork
Or
after my second watching, or if it was the daughter's.
See, that was my question. I thought initially when I watched it, I thought it was her artwork, and then afterwards I was like, oh, I bet it was actually Carol's artwork.
Yeah, it
But-
was indistinct in the beginning about whose it was.
But I mean,
It was
because it could go that
interesting.
way. I wonder, because, like I said, Lucy does mention that she had done forms of art therapy. But when you look at the daughter's studio, in the background, there is a painting that kind of looks similar. Like I didn't get enough of a focus in to see if it was like one of the ones that opened in the credits, but the style of it looked very similar to the opening credit. So I just wondered about that. And I wondered if you guys had any insight to it, or if you were more like me, where it was like, could be either. Interesting.
Didn't really remark upon it that much when I was watching it.
Oh, another point about Castle and his ploys. So here we go with this movie. Like I said, we all agree that it got really serious really quick after that and not so campy. But William Castle being William Castle, in the theaters, he handed out like foam axes to people.
Cardboard axes. Yep.
Thank you, cardboard. And I'm like, you gotta love him.
I think it had to be fairly recently. I think it was the show Betty versus Joan that was out a couple years ago, where it was about the Betty Davis Joan Crawford feud. I remember them doing footage of her coming in with the Strait Jacket axe. So she would go to theaters, she would tour with this film, and she would come in her nice, beautiful suit, looking all made up, Joan Crawford, carrying an axe into the theater. And I remembered that, and I remembered it was for this film, but I couldn't remember anything else about it. But I think it was in Betty versus Joan that came out a couple years ago, that they actually covered that she did this film.
Yeah, she did do a lot of her own promotion work as well as promoting her own Pepsi products. As during that period of her life, she's on the board of directors. So anytime they could, there was a product placement.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Her.
So she had inherited the position. Her husband had been the CEO of Pepsi, and he died, and she got on the board that way. And they did eventually oust her. But while she was, yes, absolutely. In fact, not only that, but I believe the guy who played the doctor.
Yeah, I was just going to say
a
that.
board member as well.
He was
for PepsiCo.
And the other actors were like, "This guy's awful. He can't act."
But he did just fine, though.
Honestly, I thought he was fine. I mean, he wasn't the best actor, but he wasn't the worst actor.
They're like, he's not hitting his marks.
Well, okay, that I believe.
Yeah, that I believe too.
The technicalities of being an actor is what would have been lacking. No.
Yeah, I couldn't argue. I would say that what came across on the screen was not bad, though. Another interesting fact, although a lot of people said that Joan Crawford was really difficult to work with, William Castle said that she was not difficult, and he actually enjoyed working with her. She was just a perfectionist.
Yes, although she was a professional. I think, honestly, at that point, she'd been in the industry for so long that she had an idea of how she preferred to work and didn't want to deviate from that. And yeah, she did maintain control over like script edition. And let's see what else. Her own she wanted her own cameraman, and I think that there were some others as other details as well that she insisted upon, such as the changing the ending of the movie. The end shot was supposed to be the daughter holding onto the pillar crying, and Joan wanted the focus turned back on her, which honestly I think was effective.
Yeah, I liked the ending.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little bit of like a classic wrap up, but I liked it. I liked how they did it. But yeah, and to your point, so like she had faded, and then whatever happened to Baby Jane came out, and she hit the top again, and she was just at a point of power from that point. And I think she also, let's see, so she was able to negotiate a salary of $50,000 plus 15% of the profits and receive script and cast approval for this movie.
Oh wow,
nice. The exact stuff. I looked it up because I remembered reading it, and I thought that was really interesting. So she was totally back on top and in charge. And that was also why we have Pepsi board member. Talking
Yeah.
about
It's interesting. You mentioned the cast approval. I'd forgotten about that. The first actress that they had to play the daughter was apparently just this very voluptuous, beautiful, whatnot. And Joan was like, yeah, no. Theoretically, it was said to be a decision based on the skill of that actress, but I kind of wonder if some of the
might have been.
I don't want to say diva attitude because that has a negative connotations, but just Joan Crawford being like, I am the queen of this, and removing competition, or maybe that she felt.
It's a possibility. I mean, so none of us like to go like, catty pet things about women, even though we may be catty and petty in our own right. But but there was a lot out there about Joan Crawford not being a really great person, mostly that came out from her daughter. So, I mean, Mommy Dearest was Christina Crawford's book about how her mother treated her. So, and then there's a lot that came out of, the rivalry between her and Betty Davis. Was it Betty that like basically accused her of being an alcoholic? Like,
I don't
or
know.
was it the other way around?
Yeah, I knew that there was
both ways.
butting heads between the two, but I don't know why. And I wasn't sure if it was a real, genuine reasons or manufactured bullshit.
Yeah, like how much of it was studio developed, how much of it was a real rivalry, why it was a real rivalry.
Yeah.
It was kind of both from what I understand from things, like, and a lot of it though was like Hollywood putting them against each other because they came out at kind of the same time. They were up for a lot of the same roles, and so Hollywood kind of threw them into this feud, even though they really didn't have one for a long time. And then it kind of established one because they were constantly put on edge.
I can see
And a
that.
woman's got to get paid.
Right. Well, and they were both women of a certain age at one point, they were both aging out of being like the young, new thing. So they were taking, whatever came along, and then whatever happened to Baby Jane happened, and they actually like played up the feud for that. So, but I just think like watching this, how good of an actress Joan Crawford is. Like, she's a star, and you can tell she's a star. Like, every minute, every facial expression she made was interesting. And you could tell she's carefully choosing how she looks, what she's doing every second.
Mhm.
And it's like a masterclass. And to a degree, I'm like,
Agreed.
she might be too good for this movie. It's a good movie, but I think she's too good for this.
She was too good to be in the William Castle version of this movie. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
Like, this should have been a higher caliber movie with her in it. Like, and it was, but it also wasn't high enough. Like, it should have had better effects. It should not have had that cheesy noir beginning, and like I said, it was a successful film. It was. It was the top of the charts at the time, but like when you look at Rosemary's Baby versus this, like you could just see where Castle just shot himself in the foot, where he just didn't quite transition it fully over. Like he was still holding on to Tingler type stuff.
I think that's fairly accurate. It is very much that she's an A-list actress in a B film, in a B-list movie. But she still
elevates the shit out of it
to the film, because the whole, the major themes of this movie were in the gaslighting, psychological manipulation, and the disintegration of self. And you see that through the whole film. You see her just little bits of her control and self falling away. And it's much like what you said, Betsy, it's in those facial expressions, those movements. And I've rarely seen it done so well.
She does Meltdown so well. Yeah, which brings me to another point. So I don't know if it was because of the times or because of our times now, where we're like more aware of manipulation and things that happen. But so within moments of Lucy coming home and meeting her daughter, I literally was like, the daughter's going to be the killer. Like, and like what really drove it home for me was the charm bracelet scene.
Mhm.
So she brings Lucy to the studio, Carol's her daughter, and you know, Lucy's looking at all the art that her daughter does and all that, and her daughter grabs these charm bracelets and jingles them, and you just see the instant horror reaction that just hits Lucy. She's melting down, she's freaking out. That noise she clearly associates with the murdering of her husband, and his mistress is too strong a word because it was more a one-night stand thing that was happening there.
Side piece,
Yeah.
flavor of the night. I don't know.
There you go. Fling with the ex kind of thing, because I think they said it was an ex-girlfriend, but yeah, you know, you just see it. And like, she has the daughter, Carol, that actress has the most ghoulish look on her face. And you see it hinted at in scenes prior to it, but it is so obviously ghoulish there. I'm like, yeah, I have no doubt she's the killer. No doubt. We haven't even got to the killing yet. I know that this is the killer. So
It is true. At every turn, when you see Lucy having problems, you see Carol doing the actions which 100% make it worse.
yeah.
She's
Well, even
pushing all the
Okay.
buttons. She's manipulating. She's taking it just one step too far. Like, oh, this makes you uncomfortable? Well, what if I push it to here? What
yeah.
if I do this now?
Which it starts out subtle, you know, she's taking her mom on the tour of the farm, they're looking at the chickens. Lucy looks a little upset. Carol's like, what's wrong? Lucy says, I hate to see anything caged. And then Carol's like, seemingly innocently, clearly not, goes,
Yeah.
oh, it won't be long before they're oh. It takes,
Right?
you know,
Yeah.
and it just escalates from there to the point when you get to the jingling, you know, well, first I think she pulls out the photo album, right?
Yeah,
What
she
is-
pulls up a photo album.
Which you already see her cringing, you know, you see Lucy cringing because like, and you also think like Carol can't be this dumb. Like she can't be like, oh, let me show you pictures of like, you know, your marriage and happiness that you know, right before you murdered this guy who cheated on you. It's fine. And then jingles the bracelets and then it's like, boom. And you're like, no doubt. To the point where like, she's even like, so Carol is mostly a sculptress. And Lucy starts, you know, playing with one of her things that she's working on. Looks like it's a deer. And talking about how she did sculpting and used clay in her therapy. And she, you know, grabs one tool and is scraping it a little bit. And she goes to grab another tool and she pulls it up. And like Carol freaks out, pushes Lucy's hands down because it's a knife.
Yeah.
But it's a sculpting knife. You know, like the overreaction of Carol in that moment lets you know, like you already know because of the bracelets, but you even know more that she's really fucking with her mom further, you know, like she's like, oh, not like, I don't trust you. Look at how you just grabbed this knife subconsciously. It's a sculpting knife. She was working on a sculpture. It shouldn't have been out. It's very weird. But
Yeah,
right before all that, she shows her mother a sculpture she did of her face. Interesting note, that actually was Joan Crawford's sculpture that somebody had gifted her. I think he was Yugoslavian. I don't know, but it was her actual sculpture that she used in it. And it's a gorgeous sculpture. I mean, you stare at it. It is so amazing. And I just think it's funny that like they use this gorgeous, gorgeous sculpture. And I think, you know, I'm not sure if Joan threw that in there because she really, 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 really loved it, or if it was just, hey, let's not try to make a new piece. Let's just use something that we have already. But I'm glad they did because it was really gorgeous.
It was a nice piece.
It was a beautiful piece.
The other interesting thing, so at some point you see Lucy knitting, actually, when the doctor comes to town, and ferociously knitting. And you can tell she's really knitting. And that's basically because it's a hobby of Joan Crawford's. They said anytime she had downtime, she's knitting. She just loved to knit. So she had a lot of joy putting that in the movies. She's furiously good at it.
You have to finish the damn project. And if you have to finish it while you're on set, you finish it while you're on set.
Do what you got to do.
Yeah. I also love that how you phrased it, ferociously knitting. I'm like, well, occasionally there are times where you're like, damn it, I'm going to get this thing done. I'm going to fix this problem that I've fixed 3 times already. So yeah.
And then plus, you know, the analogy of it's unraveled because she pulls it apart too. I did find the sculptor's name. it was Jaka Salamunik, and he was a Yugoslav artist, and it was originally presented to Crawford in 1941 on the set of A Woman's Face. So that's where that sculpture came from. Sorry, I was furiously trying to find it. But yeah.
The daughter instantly put up red flags. Also, the fact that she like takes her mom out to make her feel better and dresses her up almost identical to what she was wearing when she murdered her husband.
Yeah. I mean, I had to go back and check that it wasn't the same dress, and it's not. It's slightly different.
It's slightly different, but not that much different. Can we just be? It wasn't that much different. And
it's like, come on, styles would have changed between the 40s and the 60s.
Absolutely.
Thank you. That was one of the things I'm like, but you know, the hard thing is when you're looking at it, I'm like, is that I mean, I can't figure out which way they were going. Like, is that a 60s wiggle dress or a 40s wiggle dress? And would they still, I don't know. It started bugging me about what.
Yeah, honestly, the silhouette to me was more late 50s, early 60s. Of the dress she was wearing when she killed the husband.
Okay. Thank you. It just started messing with my brain. I appreciate that.
This was set in 43. When the killing was, there's distinctly different styles. Slightly more boxy on the shoulders, more tailored. You know, it would have maybe been a little bit more set. She might have maybe been wearing a suit more than a dress at that point, but yeah, it was looked to be in the same era as when they were filming it 20 years later.
Okay. Well, another funny thing, and I don't know if this struck you guys either, it's just really bizarre. As she's walking up to the bedroom window in the opening scene to, you know, witness her husband cheating, she takes off the belt of her dress.
I did notice
it's just weird, random, like, you know, it was almost like how, you know, if you get home and you want to take off your bra was the kind of feel of it, but it was the belt of her dress. Yeah. Which is strictly ornamental. Like, it does nothing. It's just a belt on this dress that's just there for no reason. And I get stuck on really weird little things. And I'm like, why the fuck did she do it? Like, it would have made sense if she was going to strangle his ass. It made no sense for her to go axe murdering somebody. I don't know. It's just weird.
Yeah, no, I did notice that. And I was like,
I mean, it's more of a dude thing to do. Like, he comes home, honey, I'm home, whips off the belt, you know, unbuttons the top button, you know.
I mostly dismissed it as irrelevant, really, at that point.
It was more of a than a
weird.
But I'm just like, okay. I mean, girl, if it was that uncomfortable, take it off.
That's the thing. Yeah, yeah. But you know me, I gotta say, but why though? Like, it's But
I wonder if there was more to that scene at one point, and then over time they cut it down a bit or changed it up a bit. But who knows? It's all supposition at this point. Who knows?
Yeah, I got nothing. There's nothing I could find in trivia because, of course, I look because I'm like, why the fuck did she take the belt off? Google's like, I don't even know what you're talking about. What is wrong with you? I wanted to know. I'm sorry. Another point of note, Leo Krause, the creepy ass farmhand that's, you know, on the brothers farm.
Yeah.
That's George Kennedy. And it probably doesn't sound super familiar, but if you were watching pretty much anything in the 80s to early 90s, George Kennedy was in it. Like Naked Gun, he was playing character roles. He was in the 1970s Death on the Nile. Just a whole bunch of stuff. And he's one of those people, like, he looks god awful in this movie. He looks much better as an older man.
Yeah, I think this is one of those that he doesn't really mention much with his career and whatnot, or didn't allude to it often.
But yeah, but he was very prolific. Like, you see him in so many things, it's almost ridiculous.
Such a character actor.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, so much stuff. It's so funny. But yeah, if you look him up, you'll be like, and you're actually probably Gen X, early millennial, you'd be like, oh, that guy. Yeah, that guy. So he was all over the place. And so it was really fun to see him in such a icky role. Because he just, like, this whole movie, he's like low-level creep the whole time. And then, like, the scene where he's like painting the doctor's car, that level of just that, which is funny, but I'm like, I guess they didn't really spray paint at the time. So know, it looks so weird, especially because I think he was using house paint.
I was just gonna say that. I'm like, what, are you using the same stuff you paint the barn
Paint the
with?
fence with.
He was whitewashing this car, and
Oh my God. Yeah, I agree. It was so bad. I was cringing. It's like, no,
I'm thinking that's going to take forever. It's going to take forever to hand paint that car with that tiny little brush that you're using.
it would look so bad. Like so bad. It would just,
It looked like he was painting it with whiteout.
so bad. Which is funny because then you get the Ohio tie-in, by the way. So they don't really tell you where this takes place, where the original murder takes place. They just say the Midwest. And they're currently, Carol and her uncle and her aunt are currently in California. But you just hear that this all happened in the Midwest and your mother was in the Midwest. And then the doctor's license plate gets focused on, and it's Ohio. We were like the pig farm in the Midwest. That's where the white trash comes from. Hello.
That's where the asylum is. Hooray!
Ooh, I wonder if she would have been in the Athens Asylum or the Columbus Asylum for the same. They had that one.
I was going to
as
say
well.
that one too. It's on the over there.
Yep.
Yeah, I've been to the cemetery for the insane.
I'll probably be buried in it, so it's fine. But yeah, so I thought that was fun. But speaking of cringeworthy, did you guys have the hardest time watching the scene where the fiance came over for drinks, where she like totally starts
Yes,
hitting on him? It was
I was uncomfortable. I had to look away.
so uncomfortable.
It was so uncomfortable. And I'm like, okay, this is what happens when you're like, I'm going to loosen up by having a real quick drink. And you haven't drunk in like 6 years. And then you're like, hey, how's it going? You're so cute.
And you're like, I'm gonna have 3 drinks.
But worse,
Yeah.
even because like even when I'm loosening up with alcohol, I'm not hitting on my daughter's boyfriend.
Yeah.
I don't have a daughter, but I assume I would not hit on her boyfriend.
I don't either. I've had stepdaughters, but yeah, no. Though I did have a stepmother that would hit on my brother when she was drunk. So I guess there's that.
Oh, good Lord.
Maybe that's why I made it extra cringeworthy for him. Like,
Yeah, you have life experience.
Like, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah.
I mean, it also was kind of funny seeing my brother uncomfortable because he was a jerk, but still it was like, stick. It was a very cringy scene. Be aware of that when you come up on it. But yeah, but it also illustrates more of how Carol's just like pushing, because originally, so her first day back from the asylum, not even unpacked yet, right? And Carol's like, yeah, my fiance is coming over for dinner. You'll get to meet him tonight. And poor Lucy's like, I can't meet strangers yet. I'm not ready. And Carol's like, oh, he's not a stranger. And like, you're like, no, she knows. She's fucking with her mom. Totally fucking with her mom.
That was one of the first things where I was like, my God, why would you do that to somebody who's fresh out of the nut house?
I mean, seriously, like less than 24 hours out. Barely knows her daughter.
Yeah.
And then her daughter's like, here, let's throw a stranger in the mix. I think it'll be fun.
Mm-hmm. Oh, but shout out for that actress. Her name Diane Baker. That's who played Carol Cutler, Lucy's daughter. The scene where her mom comes in and gives her a hug, the facial expressions on that actress's face are golden. Like you see, first of all, like total cold, non-responsiveness when her mom hugs her. And then you see her kind of melt a little bit and hug her mom back. And you see this in her eyes, but then you see, and her mouth twitches and stuff like that, like a soft smile, like she's remembering being held by her mother. And then her eyes go fucking cold as hell again. It's amazing. It is so well done. Like, I don't think, like, I mean, pretty much Joan Crawford just steals the show and it's hard to see anybody else acting around her. But this girl does phenomenal too. And that scene really stood out because if you watched her face, you were like, you know,
You're like,
so
oh,
good.
wait, what was that? Yeah, you have, it's one of these where you have to pay attention to not so much necessarily the words, but the words that they're speaking with their face.
Mm-hmm.
And that at times like that are when it really keys in. for as much as I felt the movie had some pacing issues, it seemed a little draggy at a few points. There were still those times where those interactions between the mother and the daughter, and you would see just the distaste, really, I think that the daughter had.
Though interestingly, because I didn't actually felt that there was pacing issues, so I think it's a neat perspective that you did.
Mm-hmm.
I like that there's that view of it. Like, I don't know if it's because I already was jumping ahead in my brain that I didn't see the pacing issues, or if it just strikes us differently, which is totally cool.
Yeah, and I've seen, and it's the reviews were like that too. Some people were like, "Oh no, that's fine," and other critics were like, "Yeah, pacing." So I think it does depend on how you focus in on it.
But another small cringy scene. So like, maybe it was just me, but when Carol goes and she's visiting, where she's going, she meets Michael, her fiance, for a date, and he asks her into the house because his parents have not seen her in a while. And the dad comes down and is like, "How's our girl?" And Michael's like, "Our girl?" Or the dad says, "How's my girl?" I think it is. And he's like, "What do you mean your girl?" And like the dad's like, "Oh, it's all in the family." I'm like, it's like, ew. Like,
no, it's not.
like, and it was like so funny because it came off cringy, and it like wasn't just innocently cringy, it was cringy the way he said it, because he even had that old man kind of tone to it. And I was like, was William Castle that woke, or was he that unaware? Like, I'm not sure what side of that was on.
Or
But
was it
still like,
typical of that class of individual at the time? No.
So yeah, interesting note. So class wars come into play here. As Rebecca noted at the beginning, they very much set up Lucy to be low class, white trash, slutty, which they probably only kind of like, they really drove the slutty home when she meets Michael for drinks. That's really where they drive the slutty like into your head. But
well, I think that was kind of implied in that she's a woman and she knows she's a woman.
She's a woman, yeah. But
like,
there's
wiles or whatever.
She's a slut. She just uses people. That's what a woman who knows she's a woman does, I guess. I don't know. But there's like subtle things that might be context from like upbringing stuff. But if you notice, there's one bed in the bedroom of Lucy and her husband's, like who she kills. There's just one bed. When you get to the rather large farm that her brother owns in California, the married couple has separate beds. This is actually, although a 60s thing, it's also a class thing. Where people slept in the same bed. People with money could sleep in their own beds. Sometimes even in their separate rooms, married or not. And I think you also see, I don't remember now, but Michael's parents, I can't remember if they had their own beds or not. I think they only had a single bed, but it might have been that they had their own rooms. I'm really not clear on that. Because I think
sure.
Michael's mom comes in from another room, but I might be wrong. So like that'll have to re-examine.
No, I think she did come in from another room and then came in and into his closet.
Yeah. So I think they had separate rooms, but I could be wrong on that. But again, another class thing. And which was brought home because they make a point of it with the whole Michael Carol relationship. So they say from the beginning that Carol's already concerned that they can't tell his parents because his parents won't accept her. And basically once they already sort of don't accept her, you know what I mean? Though the father's all for her.
Mean to her. Yeah.
The father's kind of all for it, might be the creepy thing, but who knows? The mom was like, I'm not real sure about this, but I guess they're getting serious. And like when it's mentioned that her mom is back in town and that she was an invalid, they don't say that what happened to her to Michael's parents at this point in time. Michael knows, but his parents are still in the dark. Her mom was simply an invalid and is now better. And that makes Michael's mom go, I wonder. And when it's found out, and even before it's found out exactly, Michael's mother has already made the decision that Carol is not good enough for her son. And it's a class thing, which I find kind of funny because I'm a shitty person. I'm like, you're a dairy farmer versus a produce farmer. What the fuck? I mean, not a produce, but like a livestock farmer. I'm like, you're just a little wealthier kids. It's really y'all playing with cows, they're playing with pigs. It's not just.
I also wonder with that scene, because I don't know, given linguistics at the time, if saying, oh, they were an invalid or they were in hospital, whatnot, I don't know if that would have had undertones of, oh, they're in an asylum.
I don't know, and I don't think that's what set her off so much as because what she says that makes her nervous was Carol being nervous about answering questions about her mother. So, and the fact that she kept distracting. So I don't know if it was invalid that added to Mike's mom being like it, but I definitely her avoidance of answering the questions and her looking to Michael to like interject definitely got his mother to be like something's here. But you're right, there's a possibility that the term invalid could have clued her into.
Yeah, I don't know if it had undertones that somebody of that time and standing
would have picked up on that either, but yeah. So yeah, cringy there. And again, it gets, like I said, this whole time it keeps getting pushed and pushed that it's obvious that Carol has an agenda because she keeps shoving her mom into these situations. Like before they go to this dinner with the family, Lucy says, I don't want to go. I am not ready for this. This is not good. Go without me. And Carol's like, nope, we're going. How dare you try? The whole thing is for you. Now, keep in mind, in between, right before this, the doctor has shown up. So there's the cringy scene where Lucy's hitting on her daughter's fiance over drinks to the point where she literally tells her daughter, oh, I forgot you're there. Your fiance is so handsome. I was just, it's so bad, folks. Just be ready to be like,
it's really cringy.
But at this time, her doctor calls, who's going to pay a surprise visit because he was on a fishing trip that was in Oregon, that was taking him through this part of California where she was located at. It's kind of interesting. Like my geography might be a little off, but it seems like to get from Ohio to Oregon, you really would need to stop in California, but all right. Shows you what I know. But and Lucy, of course, loses her shit. She accuses her daughter of calling the doctor. She's like trying to figure, she's like totally having kind of a minor meltdown, which is interesting because when Lucy has these meltdowns, though, she's not grabbing weapons.
No, she's not being violent. She's just very, very upset.
Yeah, she's like,
I feel like you're seeing her more of her true self when she's having these outbursts. Yeah. You're just like more for emotions. Let me phrase it that way.
Yeah. It very much looks like what it is, which is a panic attack. You know what I mean? Like she's, in the middle of an anxiety panic attack. She's like, help, scream. She yells for her brother, which props to her brother and his wife. They're super supportive of her the whole time.
Yeah. They seem to be the only reasonable people in this film. Brother and
yeah, and that's they really handled the whole thing kind of beautifully, and they were constantly sticking up for her too. They were like, Carol, you can't have her do this. Like, don't you understand that it's probably uncomfortable for her? Like, they were constantly, but then Carol would push, and then she would be like, oh, I'll do it for Carol, because she wanted to win her daughter's affection. She wanted that kind of relationship with her daughter, and so she was putting herself into these uncomfortable situations even though she didn't want to be in them.
Yeah. So being a motivating factor too, as well, feeling like maybe the character feeling like she had robbed her daughter at this time, so she sort of owes it to her to try to move forward in these situations, despite however awful they are for her.
Yeah. And then, this is also an interesting scene. So actually the first time where they try to have Michael meet Lucy for the dinner, where Lucy disappears. She runs out the door. She's like, I'm not ready, so she hides. Michael ends up in the studio because that's where Carol takes him, thinking that her mom might be hiding there. And there's the photo album that Lucy had presented to her before, with, of course, a knife sticking in the middle of the photo album. And Carol is trying to hide it from Michael. Michael opens the photo album and looks terrified because in the photo album, every face of Lucy's husband has been cut out and placed back in there. And this also was like, yeah, this is not what a crazy woman would do. If a crazy woman was going to do this, she would just hack the pictures the fuck up. Yeah. You wouldn't neatly cut out the oval of the face and keep it placed in there. Like, it's just
no. Or or there'd be like a weird bag of faces somewhere or something, but it wouldn't be like I just left them there. No, you collect them, you do something, you set the whole thing on fire. You don't just cut his face out and leave it.
It was just weird.
Like,
And not in a normal crazy way weird. Like I know
Yeah.
crazy is supposed to be crazy, not reasonable, but if you ever watch Crazy for real and been around it, there's kind of a pattern to the crazy, and that doesn't really follow a crazy pattern. Like I hate this man. So yeah, I mean, like the eyes might have been poked out of it, perhaps. Like I said, the face might have been defaced, but you wouldn't just cut out the face and leave it. Because it would be literally if you just did this and just left my face here, like it was still in the picture, you just cut a circle around it.
mhm.
It
was weird.
was clearly a setup and a bad one, in my opinion.
I was gonna say a lot of the stuff that, when you think about it, a lot of the things that the daughter did not particularly make sense. And that's because she was just trying to set her mom up, basically.
Yeah. So the doctor comes, the doctor talks to Lucy. Lucy is clearly in the middle of a meltdown. He then goes and talks to Carol and is like, you know, she was really on probation, and it was suggested that on my vacation I stopped by unofficially, but yeah, your mom's going to need to go back. And Carol's like, really, do you have to? And like, the doctor's like, no, I don't got to call him. I'll just take him back myself. I'll take her back myself. And she's like, but your vacation. And he's like, yeah, it'll be all right. And the doctor goes to look for Lucy. The doctor has his head chopped off, and by a shadowy figure that appears to be Lucy. Appears to be. So, and then, you know, Carol comes across Lucy later on, and this is interesting to me. I mean, Carol's fucking evil. Let's just be honest. Like, just totally, like, you would get that she'd be mad at her mom, but this level of evil with the gaslighting and the way she plays with poor Lucy's mind, it's
awful.
It is awful. It's narcissistic.
Horrible.
It's just terrible. It's beyond just, I'm mad because my childhood was hell because you murdered my dad. It was just fucking horrible. And she totally gaslights her mom here too. She's like, what did you do to the doctor? Where is he? Did he leave? Did he leave? His car's still here, you know? And Lucy has no idea. Like, you know, I mean, she had a meltdown. She's blacked out. She doesn't know. She thought the doctor left. She ran away. She got nothing. And, you know, of course, now she's questioning herself. But then Lucy goes and hides the car, which is why later on creepy ass Leo Krause is painting it, because he's like, free car for me. Because he saw Carol do this. And then, like, you know, her mom's super happy because she sees the car's gone. You know, she doesn't know Lucy moved it. And she's trying to tell her daughter, look, I didn't know what happened. Obviously, everything's fine because the car's gone.
The car's gone. He must have left after we saw it. Everything's fine.
It's so sad.
I was gonna say that was probably like one of the saddest scenes to me, is when she's like, the car's gone, so everything is fine, because she's thinking, did I go into some kind of a fugue state and kill this man? And I just don't remember. And you can see that, like, you can see her going through, like, I literally don't have a memory of this. Like, I just remember being in this room. Did I kill someone? And I just don't know.
Very much see her grasping at that, and it's almost like she's hoping that she can retain some kind of normalcy, some kind of sanity.
Yes,
because the car's gone.
She's not as far gone as she thinks she is.
Yeah.
Because she's like, no, his car's gone, or it's okay, everything is okay. That was kind of heartbreaking for me. I was like, ow.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Like, Lucy, you are heartless. Or Carol, you are heartless.
Yeah. It was terrible. It was really terrible. And yeah. So this leads us up to when she ends up. So now it's at the meet the parent stage where, you know, here's another funny thing. So fugue state thing. I love this. This I thought was really well done, especially clearly on a low budget. They get to Michael's family's house. You know, Lucy's already stated I shouldn't be doing this. She's there anyway. She gets out the car, and then like you just see this melty scene where like the house just kind of is like melting and everything's phasing out. And the next thing you know, she's in a black and white striped room with a makeup vanity in it. And you can tell she thinks she's back in the asylum. Go ahead.
I loved that shot, the way it was done. because it very much did look like she was utterly locked in, because the way it was kind of from the vertical, you couldn't see the door or the break of where the door was. And I'm like, and I actually was wondering, is this
A
a
flashback.
scene thoroughly in her own mind?
Yeah. I also
Yeah.
wonder if it was a flashback to the asylum, aside from the fact that there was a vanity in it. I'm like, this is
Right.
Yeah, that same wondering. I'm like, what is this setup? Is this real? Is this in her mind?
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah, which it
And-
was, because she's even screaming in the scene, but in reality she wasn't, because otherwise people would have come running. And just, when she's having this breakdown, then all of a sudden you could just see she's tensed, and her daughter opens the door and she's like shuddering in a corner. And here apparently at some point during a blackout. Oh, go ahead, Betsy.
That moment, she opens the door and she's sitting there and she's got the tears on her face and she's like wiping them away because she's trying to look normal. She's trying to show that she wasn't just having a total and utter meltdown just now. And so she's like, and just that moment of her going like this, and you can see like the tears just running down her face, and she's just like, everything's fine, everything's fine. And she's like, Mom, it was just coffee. And you're
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
what has happened?
And you still really don't know,
Joan
other
Crawford.
than Lucy has spilled coffee on her dress somehow, and Carol cleaned it off.
Yeah. Just Joan Crawford, man. I just can't. It's that moment though, I was like,
It's all you got. I mean, wow.
girl. Holy
Just
crap.
amazing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And then again, you just watch your daughter throw her to the wolves again,
Yes,
so
I know.
Michael goes to take Carol and Bill, and I think Emily was the wife's name,
Wife's name, yeah.
on a tour of the new dairy barn or something like that. And of course Lucy's like, well, I'll go too. And Carol's like, no, you just stay here. You don't need to go out in the silly old barn, leaving her alone with Michael's parents. Like, know that this is heartless bullshit. I mean, there is no justifying this. This is,
This is not going to end well.
yeah. And you're hoping like Bill or Emily will stand up for it, but they're like, no, it's fine. Da, 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 da. But I would say in this moment, I think Bill and Emily had no idea what was going on with the class strategies, there. Like, I don't think they were feeling it. Because if they had any insight, they would not have had that happen.
I was gonna say, I don't think that Carol was being particularly honest with her family, like with her aunt and uncle, about how fraught the relationship with her and Michael was, and how she didn't really have the parents' approval yet, and that's why they weren't telling anybody that they were like trying to be engaged and that kind of stuff. Which we know because we're the fly on the wall for the whole thing, but I don't think she had told anyone else that it was that fraught and that the relationship was that tense. Because I think if they had known that, they would have absolutely nixed Lucy coming with them to meet the parents. And I think they would have
at least
reacted.
not left them alone with them. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
At the very least, yeah. So
Because it was bad.
it was so bad. And to give Lucy her due, like, her end result of what she was really freaking out about is because Michael's mom was like, yeah, your daughter's not, because of you, because of your class, and because you're, we're a nutcase, your daughter is not good for our son. And which ends up not being wrong, but not for the right reason.
Not wrong,
Not
but
for
not
those
the
reasons.
he says.
Yeah. But Lucy's like, my daughter will not be denied. She's like, my daughter deserves this. She will have the happiness she deserves. And she, runs from the house. And it's, kind of a lovely scene that in the middle of all this stress and all this craziness, she's still really just thinking about her daughter. She doesn't give a shit that they don't accept her. She's mad because her daughter's happiness is now going to be lost. And she won't have it.
I think the way they default to that is definitely a sign that it's a core value that she's still holding on to deeply, because she's stressed, she's upset. What is she reverting to? She's reverting to that, trying to protect her daughter.
Mm-hmm. I mean, clearly not what she was thinking when she was asking, her daughter's father, but now she's there.
That was just pure rage.
Yeah.
Rage.
And again, I don't think she was wrong. Maybe killing the one night stand was wrong, but killing the husband, motherfucker deserved it. I had to chop him in the crotch first.
And how she would go for the axe. I can understand.
But here's where Here's where I think Carol made a mistake, in my opinion. I mean, she made several mistakes. Like I said, we all figured out what was happening here, like real early on. But she had the dad mostly on her side. Like the dad didn't even seem really that worried about, Lucy being nutty or anything. It was just the mom that needed to go.
Right.
But I'm sorry, Betsy, you look like you're the.
No, I'm just saying, like, yes, you're absolutely right. That is exactly right.
Just kill the mom.
Fine. Kill the mom.
Done. Probably maybe even got away with it because she wasn't that nice a person. Though I love the dress she was wearing, by the way.
That was a nice dress.
Great
She was
dress.
very stylish.
Horrible person.
Yep.
But yeah, no. So the next person on the axe list to get axed, however you want to put it, ends up being Michael's dad by a Lucy looking character who just axes him to death and then is lying in wait to attack Michael's mom next. And in between these happenings, you see Lucy on the street coming back to the house. So you're pretty sure that that's not Lucy in there, even though it looks a lot like Lucy. And then Lucy bursts in just as the fake Lucy's about to chop at Michael's mom, and the fake Lucy, which props to that plastic mask. It was so wonderfully creepy. Like it looked like her face and looked like only plastic around the eyes. It was really
The
well
prop
done.
did a good job with that one.
They must have spent money on that one. It's lovely creepy. Whips the axe at Lucy. There's a struggle ensuing. Mask gets ripped off. Shock! It's Carol. Spoiler alert, little late, but if you haven't figured it out by now, the current axe murderer is Carol. And man, the girl sticks to her story though. Like once the mask is pulled off, and I believe Lucy's also got hold of the axe at this point too. I think she goes down this. She just leaves her daughter. She realizes this is her daughter, and she walks out of the room and down the stairs holding the Lucy mask and maybe the axe. I don't know.
I think she has the axe as well.
Michael sees her and sees that she's like just in shock and holding this thing, and she just kind of hands it. And I think actually she doesn't even start handing it to him until Carol started coming down the stairs screaming. Carol, who's currently dressed exactly like her mother, by the way, down to the charm bracelets, screaming that her mom just killed his dad, and there's just Lucy holding out this mask, and Mike is clearly aware that it was not Lucy, because why the fuck is Carol dressed like her, and what is this mask? And yeah, then we have Carol's meltdown scene, and that actress does this lovely job as well. So Lucy just walks out the door at this point, and I think she handed the mask to Michael.
Yep, she gives him the mask. And then just walks outside with the axe and kind of has a little bit of a meltdown on the porch, which rightfully so. I get it.
Carol gets the mask back and just starts, explaining to Michael that it's okay because, we're just going to blame it on Lucy, and now they could be together and have all the money, and they don't have to worry about it. And then just goes from that to pounding and poking at the mask, saying how much she hates her mom and she loves him and she hates her mom. And you see Lucy on the porch hearing this and just melting more and more, and just, wow, great scene. But man, Carol tried. She was gonna hold it to the end, and man, if she probably didn't have that costume on, she might have pulled it off. And if the mom hadn't seen her, because she was just deadpan. She's like, no, it was my mom.
And then she admitted everything. So yeah, you can't cover it up at that point.
Well, because Mike's looking at the mask and looking at her dress like Lucy, being like,
yeah,
this is right. This occurs to me that it may perhaps not have been your mother, but yeah. Which brings us to the end scene that Rebecca, was it you pointed out that Joan Crawford insisted on?
Yes.
Where they basically explain it all. In case you didn't figure it out.
Yeah, it was very extemporaneous, but I don't think it took away from anything. And I think, given the nature, I think it was appropriate to turn the focus back on Lucy's character.
Yeah, and plus, she has her moment where so this is what I wondered about, and you guys tell me what you think. So at the end, after she's packing up all the stuff, and her brother asks her, if she's going to ship this off to Carol, and she was like, no, I'm going to put this all away. I'm going to Carol. And he says to her, he's like, but she's in a place like you were. And Lucy's like, yeah, I know, she needs me. I'm going to be there for her. I'm her mother. Do you think she was going to have herself committed alongside her daughter, or was she just going to be somewhere close to visit?
That's kind of where I took it from, that she was going to go back into the asylum.
That's kind of what I thought, is she was saying, you know what? I'm just gonna go back. I'm just gonna go back to the asylum and be there for my daughter, and hopefully we can get better together or something.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the impression I got too, but I didn't know if I maybe was reading too much into it. So
Yeah, that's the way it came off to me.
which, damn.
I'm like, no.
I mean, I know my parents sure as hell wouldn't do that for me. My parents might axe murder somebody, but that would have nothing to do with me. But
I think it'd be more like I wouldn't find anything.
what you do? I might kill somebody for a friend just for fun too. It's not, nothing does.
Out of the question. What did the
Like, what
person do?
Did you upset my friend?
How badly?
I got a shovel, a shotgun, and machete, a couple swords, and dogs that will eat anything. I'm not worried about you. Meanwhile, so we know.
I thought that the ending was really good, honestly. The little tack on bit, and her kind of being like, look, I've been in an asylum for 20 years. I'm obviously not doing very well on the outside, although whose fault was that, Carol?
She's very sane at the end, let's put it that way.
I was gonna say she seemed very sane.
That was going to be my comment as well, that she seemed back to herself. She was composed. She was in control. She was making her own decisions.
Yeah.
But, to that point, once you've been gaslit and you find clear evidence that it was, in fact, somebody fucking with your mind and not actually you who was being insane, you do get real clear and real sane. You do have, that after effect is like, oh, okay. I was not nuts. I got this.
Right.
You have confirmation that you can, in fact, trust your own mind.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And
until somebody questions you again, then you can't trust your own mind again. But that moment when you have that, then.
But I can't even imagine, like, being someone who had been in an asylum for 20 years and obviously had your sanity questioned daily for 20 years, and then you get back out and they tell you that you are okay to be back out in the world, and then you are immediately put in a situation where people are making you constantly doubt your own mind and what that would do to you as a person. And how, I mean, really in the end, Lucy handled it pretty well, that she only had a couple of meltdowns, considering.
Mm-hmm. Especially given that she had spent 20 years in asylum, how institutionalized had she become?
Right.
Because you see that with people who spend a significant amount of time in prison, they often, one of the
even
problems,
the armed forces.
Yeah, anybody who's in that highly structured environment for so long, they get out of it and they're kind of adrift. What do you do? I don't have someone telling me, be here at this time, do this, go this.
Absolutely. Yeah. Excellent point.
Yeah, I just think
how much of that urged her also to be like, well, maybe I'll just go back in the asylum too.
Could have definitely been a contributing factor for sure.
Yeah.
Now, here's an interesting thought. Like, is it just me, or does it seem like there's a significant amount of William Castle films that deal with gaslighting on some level? I mean, like, you see it for sure in House on Haunted Hill.
Certainly.
Where they, I would say you see it to a degree in Tingler. There's that whole point where Vincent Price's character fucks with his wife, not that his wife doesn't kind of deserve some fucking with, but he like totally just to get the pure response out of her. I think there's a little bit in the original 13 Ghosts, but admittedly, there's been a long time since I've watched that one. Definitely in Rosemary's Baby. So it's interesting. I wonder if William Castle suffered from it, or if he was fascinated by it, or was a perpetrator of it. It's interesting to me.
It is an interesting thought. Like, or maybe in his mind, the worst thing that could possibly happen is for someone to make you doubt your own sanity. Because I know that's something that's something for me that's bad. Like, if somebody's like, that didn't actually happen, I'm like, did it not happen? Like, oh my God. like that's a horrible feeling. So I can totally see where that may be something that he's like, the worst thing that can happen to someone is for someone to make them
Drive
feel
you
like
actually.
they are crazy. Like when they're not, when they're actually completely sane and nobody believes them.
Yeah, I think he clued into that fact that is a horror,
Yeah,
can be the subject of a horror film. That loss of self, that loss of your mind.
absolutely.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
So I guess with that, final thoughts, folks.
I thought it was a really well done film. I would have liked to have seen maybe more put into it, as raise the budget, perhaps try to elevate it a little. With I think with some work, it could have been an A-list film. But I thought the performances by the actresses were very strong, and it's definitely worth watching.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Come for Joan Crawford, stay for the girl who played Carol, Diane. She was amazing as well. Like her last meltdown is so good. But yeah, I came into this with expecting it to be very camp and very, I don't want to say silly, but like a little more silly than this. And then what
Some of the earlier Castle films, maybe.
yeah, like more like, yeah, like some of the other Castle films. And what I got instead was this very interesting psychological thriller about a woman who did have a mental break, and then what it's like when someone's trying to make you get there again. And that's a subject, man. This is as disturbing as gaslighting.
Yeah.
It's bad. Like all I kept thinking was this poor woman. Yeah, it's super good. I went into it with no expectations and came out going, wow, that's a great film. All right, I have to remember that. That is a good film. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, agreed. I went into it totally. I had expectations. My expectations were Tingler level William Castle. Classic House on Haunted Hill William Castle. And I thought I was getting it when I first started watching it. And then right when you start dealing with Carol, I was like, okay, some shit is real here. And that's when I shut it off. I'm like, I need some pizza, some popcorn, some alcohol, and I need to be ready for this because this is some serious shit that's going to happen here. And I was floored. I was wowed. Like I knew Joan Crawford was a good actress. I've seen her in other stuff. I really think like I probably have to rewatch some of her older movies, but she just knocked it out of the park in this movie. Like, had they had a better budget and this was not William Castle directing it, like it's not that he's a bad director, but he goes for camp. And I wonder that he doesn't do that to protect himself emotionally, but that's a whole other conversation. But like this should have been an award-winning, like Oscar worthy. Is her and was it Diane Baker, I believe it is, who played Carol? Just fucking phenomenal performances. And really we should have probably trigger warned this a little bit, because what it really is it's toxic relationships and gaslighting. That's what the whole movie is, for sure. And it's just wow. It sounds really stupid saying that about a William Castle film, though after coming off of Rosemary's Baby, where he did produce that, which again was a revelation to all of us about that. We're like, wait, what? Oh, hell. But I think had he gone for it budget wise and like reputation wise, like he did with Rosemary's Baby, this would have outstripped it. I mean, it was just, with the exception of the schlocky beginning and the bad special effects, this is really a good film and I highly recommend it.
Absolutely. Check this one out. And you can find it for free. So go watch it.
Watch the movie.
No excuse not to.
Just remember STRAIT, so you don't do idiot things like I did.
And I
There's
did.
also a short, like a 15-minute talk on the movie. think it's called like Battle Axe, making a straight jacket maybe. But if you just search like Battle Axe documentary Joan Crawford straight jacket, you should be able to find it.
Awesome. Yeah. With that, I hope you enjoyed. I hope you watch this movie. It's really, really good. And this has been Girls Go Schools, and I'm Jenny.
I'm Rebecca.
And Betsy.
Have a great night.
Bye.
You have been listening to the Girls Go Schools podcast. You can follow us on Facebook or Instagram at Girls Go Schools podcast, on Twitter at Girls Ghost Pod. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Girls Go Schools podcast, and find our podcast on your favorite podcatcher.